Welcome to this podcast, Holistic Creators, where we share our unique and universal stories about shaping the future for the 4 Ps: people, planet, purpose, and profit. My name is Swanette. I'm a mental coach and your host of this show. My intention for this show is to inspire you on your path to a holistic future. So welcome. Hello and welcome to my podcast, Holistic Creators. My name is Swanette and I'm your host. Today my guest is Lisa Sakai. She is the ultimate bucket list planner. She founded One Vision Retirement with 2 ideas in mind: a client-first approach and a focus on advice and planning. Her mission is simple: to cut through the noise and provide thoughtful, customized financial advice tailored for your personal situation. Lisa's story began, like many original stories do, in Hollywood. 3 years after graduating from Kenyon College, Lisa was working for a well-established film producer when she noticed he was greenlighting projects that didn't align with her values. She was sitting at a car wash getting the producer's car retailed for the 4th time that week when she realized, I want to make a difference. After trying careers in education and then insurance, she found her calling, providing financial advice and planning for female professionals and their growing families. With the heart of a servant and the mind of a teacher, Lisa is always available to help you when you need her most, but especially when you think you don't need her. So welcome to my show, Lisa.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I was so attracted because we had the chance to speak before by this idea of the bucket list. And this really was like, yeah, if I want to have money, then it is for something that is really attracting me. So let us know a little bit about your story and how you became the bucket list planner.
Perfect. Yeah. So I've been in the industry for about 12 years now. And through all that time, obviously, I've talked to thousands of different people. I don't have thousands of clients, but I've obviously talked to thousands of different people, as you do when we network and build our businesses, right? And the one thing that I noticed was that with finance, everybody got really serious or kind of almost had a depressed feeling when they were talking about finances. And it's funny, we have kind of a two-way street with that. You know, you go to a wonderful conference, maybe a women's conference, and everybody says, who wants to be a millionaire? And everybody gets up and screams and says, oh, I do, right? And so we have that feeling with money. But then when it comes to the reality of what to do with our money, then we start to shrivel up and get very negative almost. Women in particular, and I do this too, so I put myself in this category. You know, we tend to try to be perfectionists on everything because we want to do things really well. We want to be an expert in everything. That's why we're so powerful and wonderful, right? But at the same time, by trying to be perfect at everything right away, we tend to forget to have fun with it. We tend to forget it's a journey sometimes. And the bucket list planning helps you actually create a journey for yourself rather than, oh, I can't do this. I'm not going to make it. You know, if you focus on something fun versus something that's negative or something we should do. That's the thing that we always get stuck in, is that should do. Society says we should have a home that was paid off. We should have, you know, a certain amount of money in the bank. We should have, you know, whatever that is. And if it's not attached to anything that you actually care about, those should haves are wonderful, but you're never going to accomplish them, which is going to make you not feel empowered. And you're just not going to do that journey, which is unfortunate. We want everybody to have financial independence. So the bucket list planning allows you to attach something exciting and new, really put a why to it, really understand why you want that. And then you work towards it, which is, you know, it can be anything from a trip to Bali. I have a client who had always wanted to go to Vienna. She's from there. I mean, not originally, but she's American, but her family's from Vienna, and she'd always wanted to go visit, you know, family she never met, all that stuff. And she said, oh, in retirement, I'll do that. Well, I said, well, why are we waiting for retirement? That's 10 years from now. Why don't we go sooner than that? And she said, well, I just never thought about that. So we actually worked towards that. And she's going to get to go about 6 years earlier than she planned on going, which is exciting to her. And she's thinking about what's her next trip, what's her next thing, and she hasn't even gone yet. She's going this year. So it was motivating, and she's still on track for retirement. She's still actually probably in a better place financially than she was before doing this bucket list planning, because she feels empowered and she feels like is in control of her money. That's what that process looks like.
Yeah,
So long
wow.
answer, but that's what bucket list planning is in a nutshell.
Yeah, absolute amazing. And I totally hear you, because a lot of people telling me as well, yeah, I will do what I love or travel or whatever it is when I'm retired, because then I have the time and I will have the money then. But
Yeah.
perhaps you don't have the health anymore, or you are not
Yeah.
motivated anymore, or whatever happens. You'd never know.
Yeah.
So I
Exactly.
think this is having this bucket list and understanding what is really a desire and what would motivate me to, yeah, bring my financial stuff in order is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, I love it. It's so much more fun to talk about fun stuff rather than talk about, saving, planning, you know. That's all part of it, but it's got a more fun overtone because you've got something attached to it that you're really looking forward to doing.
Mm. Have you realized that people have a different mindset about money or beliefs about money when you have worked in Hollywood, or if people come from a little village? Do you see that there's a variety or difference?
Yeah, there is actually. That's a really interesting question. I love that question. There is a difference. Some people, I'm going to use my husband and I as examples of this. So I grew up in, I would say, kind of a silver spoon in my mouth. I grew up in a very nice, upper middle class family. My dad's an orthopedic surgeon, or was. He's retired now. And so, I grew up in a pretty nice environment, didn't have to necessarily want for very much. Everything was provided for me. My husband grew up in I wouldn't say poverty, but they were close to it. I mean, they definitely had to work hard and had to scrimp and save and had to stay in less desirable areas, and finally, ended up kind of in Compton area. Um, and so he and I come at money in a different way. He sees it a little bit more on a scarcity side, where I see a little bit more of abundance. And I think that that's just from the way we were raised. He didn't have a lot growing up, but I had plenty. I mean, not we weren't multimillionaires, but we were fine. And so I think that that kind of does creep into our psyche. I also think rather than just economic sides of things. And I would say, every culture has a different way of doing it. I have a couple that's British, and they tend to be a little bit more flashy and, want to show off a little bit more. And I don't know if that's because they're British or not, or whether that's, different. And then I have an Australian couple who are very, they want to use their money to give back quite a bit. They don't necessarily want to go off on exorbitant trips and stuff, but they want to be in nature a lot. So that could just be them, or that could be part of their cultural heritage too. But I would say the biggest thing is education levels, meaning not college and, that kind of education, but how much exposure you had to money growing up makes a big difference on the way that you handle money now. In general, women don't get talked to about money as much as men are. Basically, I kind of already laid out the scenarios of how my husband and I were raised. I was sent to really nice prep schools and really good college and everything. And when I asked my dad, I don't understand the stock market, could you explain it to me? Even though he had spent a ton of money on education for me and believed I could do anything I wanted to, kind of patted me on the head and said, you don't have to worry about that. You're fine. And my husband had a full knowledge of it, mainly out of necessity. He had to be in there to help his parents who were immigrants in this country, help them with mortgage, with insurances, with interest rates and things, he had a better knowledge than I did. And, it was just talked about with him more. And you wouldn't think that on the economic side that he would have a better education than I would, but just women in general, we don't get talked to very much about this. Our moms don't sit us down and say, okay, here's how we write a check. Here's how you balance your checkbook. Here's how you feel about money when you have it. And here's what you should, it just doesn't happen that much. And so I do think that women come at money very differently than men do a lot of the times. Obviously this is kind of an overarching statement I'm making, and some women are not in that category, but there are a lot of women who do come at it in a very different way than men do. And I think we have problems as couples sometimes handling our money together because of that.
Yeah, I totally hear that. And what I see, I come from Germany, so we never are taught in our school system how to handle money. This is not a topic. Even if we have higher education, this is never a topic. So if you are not interested by yourself or come in contact with this topic because of your parents or friends you are connected to or whoever, you will normally don't learn how you can invest money or how you can really be very productive and earn a lot of money. So it is more like, you have to go to school, then you have whatever education, and then you have your job, and at the end you will have your retirement, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what we tend to get told, just put in your 401k, don't worry about it otherwise, and you're good. And we as women are smart enough to go, that's probably not enough. We're probably missing something. And for some reason, a lot of women that I've worked with internalize that and are almost ashamed, like they feel ashamed of themselves that they don't know more than just put it in their 401k and don't worry about it and don't just try to live within your means and that's enough. They feel like there's a whole part missing and that they're somehow different than a lot of other people, that everybody else is doing it right and they're missing a big piece of it, and it's their fault and they're quote unquote stupid because they don't understand a basic thing, which is finance, right? And that's a horrible way to come into that. And it's amazing how much shame a lot of women will come into meeting with me. I hear couldn't do what you did at math, or I hear a lot, I know I'm doing a lot of things wrong. When really I look at their situation and they're doing 85+% right. That's actually a really good score. And a lot of times men are doing things crazy. And I'm like, what are you doing? Why were you doing that? And they're totally confident in what they're doing. But the women, it's funny. We have this, it's really interesting how that's kind of morphed into our psyche. And we don't really talk about it very much. We talk about body distortions and things like that, and being comfortable in our own skin when it comes to a physical side of things a lot, but we don't talk about that finance piece very much.
So, and I can only share from my own history, like in my family, we have a tradition that my grandmother has been in 2 world wars, my father has been in 1 world war. So for them, it was like they created wealth and they lost everything, and created wealth and lost everything. So for me, it's like I had this belief like money will never be safe. Like the world is not safe. We can't hold our wealth, and kind of these beliefs. And of course, my life showed up like that. I earned a lot of money and I lost a lot of money. And I think a lot of people have believed that they are not even aware of, like money is bad, or money is hard to catch, or whatever it is. So work hard to gain our money. So do you hear these kind of beliefs or other beliefs from your clients?
Yeah, I do hear a lot of that. That resonates a lot with me. I hear that a lot. And the fact that you have an understanding of where you're coming from is very unique, because most people don't. they know that the path that they've taken isn't necessarily the path that they want to continue on. That there's needs to be some changes, maybe they've done some things that are good, but they need to continue to do them, or they feel some kind of whatever that is. It's interesting. So I ask a couple of questions when I first talk to people, and one of them that I ask is your first money memory. That's really interesting to hear what people say. I've had people say, I remember the first money memory I have. This gentleman said, I remember being 3 or 4 years old and he found a $5 bill on the ground. That's it. There's nothing else attached to that, but that's what he remembers. And, you can read a lot into that. I'm not a psychiatrist. That's definitely not what I do. But it's really interesting because watching his patterns after that, he tends to store money away in places that he knows he can just open it up and see it, which is really interesting. And you kind of wonder if that's because of his first money memory of finding something that was lost by somebody else. It's really interesting. The other question I ask a lot, which is a really interesting answer a lot of times, is I say, what's the first word you think of when you think of money? And I get wealth, I get lots of different things, but I've had women tell me dangerous, which was really interesting. I said, that's your first word? And I felt horrible because I was like, no judgment, no judgment. Dangerous was such an interesting word. I never heard that before. And she proceeded to tell me about, how money kind of came in and out of the family a lot, very similar to what you had said, got it and lost it a lot. And so it seemed dangerous, almost like unstable. And then I have some people say money's growth, and I have other people say money's security. And a lot of times that will happen. I do hear growth and security a lot, and it's usually married couples that are looking at each other going, oh, we have totally different feelings about money. It's really interesting. So yeah, so it's the psyche of money is very, very interesting for sure.
Yeah, and do you see that these feelings or these memories that come with money will show up in how people will save money, or how they will invest if they are, for example, more risky, like, okay, trying out and losing money is, no, this happens, or if they are more like, okay, I need to save it really. And do you see that there's a connection between, or how could this connection be, like, this mindset or this first idea about money and then how they spend or invest money?
Sometimes I would say sometimes I do see that. I do think that sometimes it's a little bit more deep-seated than their first money memory or something like that. It's also sometimes just not understanding how markets work, or how money is made, or how inflation impacts things. That's a big one that's coming up now because people, I have this capability that I really don't. I try to explain things in a way that people understand them versus using financialese. I was an English lit major. I was not a financial major. So therefore I'm able to actually explain things in a way people can understand them. And it's funny how much it's come up that people don't understand inflation, but it's being talked about everywhere. And inflation's one of those words that we hear a lot and we just kind of nod and go, okay. And they have a basic kind of understanding that just means things cost more, but they don't really understand the impact it has on your cash in the bank, or cost of goods and why that happens, or anything like that, and so it's without having a true understanding of some things, like just a basic understanding of some things, it's scary, right? Because you look at things like the markets in 2022 were very disruptive. They were not great. I wouldn't say they were horrible. I mean, we've had worse markets than that, but it's still not a good market. And so essentially, people start to do the fight or flight. We run into our basic instinct, right? So some people say, we'll just hold out and we'll just go through this. And Some of those people have gone through this before, and some of them are young and have never gone through this before, but they just decide they're going to do that. And some want to fly. I mean, some go, get out. I don't want to be involved with this, anything like that. And it's funny. I usually, if I can explain to people who want to fly, which, I think most people know you're not supposed to sell into a down market if you don't need the money, if you're not, you can make some strategic changes, but you don't want to necessarily sell when a stock's down. That's not the idea. You're supposed to, buy low, sell high, right? So when people have that instinct to sell or to get out or to just put all their money in under a mattress because everything's so horrible, I try to explain things. Actually, I was just talking to a client about this last night, and I was trying to explain how the difference between buying a stock and buying a mutual fund and how there's diversification and what that means. I could go on all day about this, but basically once she started to understand the difference of the risk between an individual stock versus having a diversified portfolio with maybe thousands of stocks in it, she started to, I could see her shoulders relax a little bit. And she's like, oh, that makes so much more sense. So it's just about communication and watching people and trying to come from, understand where they're coming from rather than judging them and saying, well, you just don't know, which I think in I hate to say it, in the financial culture, a lot of times people feel like they're getting talked down to a lot, which I think is really, really sad. I think we're supposed to be here to educate and to help people and to realize that maybe they don't have some of these basic understandings, and that's okay. That's what our job is here to do. So I'll start to explain something. I say, well, do you understand this concept, which is a couple of steps back from where we're starting from? And they say, no, I don't. And so we have to go those couple of steps back to start and get them to that knowledge so they can understand the other point of knowledge that we're trying to get to. So I know that was kind of a long-windy answer, but hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we come back to this question of where do we get this knowledge? And we don't get it in our education. We don't get it when we grow up. So it is really like this is a missing topic.
Yeah.
And so you are teaching people or not helping them to understand
Yeah.
what are possible choices. So it is not only to put the cash money below your pillow, because this will definitely not survive the inflation. But
Hmm.
how it is possible to invest wisely and yeah,
Yeah.
variety
Yeah,
of.
yeah, I totally agree. That's the one thing that people aren't realizing. Market's not doing well. Like I think the S&P is down, I think it's 19% or something like that. And but your cash is down, let's say 7%. If we're going to kind of average out what inflation looked like, your cash is down 7%. And people don't make that connection, because if you have $20,000 in the bank and you open up your bank account, that 20,000 is still there. So it makes you feel really secure, but your purchasing power, which is really what money is down 7%. And so the thing that we think of as safety wasn't so safe last year, including bonds, right? That market fell apart last year. So it's this year in particular kind of turned things on its head, where people were like, oh, things are different. And that's why, we always have to talk in historics, because that's all we can talk about. I can't predict the future, but historics are just historics, things are unpredictable. And that's why, everybody says this in our industry, and you guys are probably all sick of hearing it, but that's why you have different buckets and different strategies to go together, so that not all one thing is in one bucket. Because if you have everything in one vehicle, one bucket, and that implodes for some reason, there's nowhere else that's doing somewhat okay. Um, so yeah, it's the education is really hard to do, because you have unreliable sources. I'm trying to find a nice way of putting it. Unreliable sources out there a lot of times. And I go on, particularly on Facebook groups. I love Facebook groups. I love LinkedIn groups. Those are great sources of information. But, you've got to be careful when you ask a question on there. What kind of answers are you getting? And are those actually opinions or are those education? That's the difference. And so you've got to be really clear on who you're getting your information from, and do you trust that source, and do you know where they're coming from?
Yeah, also what is the intention behind this information? Yeah, so sometimes if, and I'll give you just an example, if someone works for a bank, they are selling their product, so to say. So you will only get a limited amount of different options because they have this variety, and therefore they will talk you in one of them. And I think if you have someone who is really independent and oversees the market, this is a totally different topic. So I think this is also important to understand whom are you talking to, don't you think?
I totally agree with that. I was just talking to a client yesterday, and they were asking what to do with some extra cash that they have. And, I was going through the different options, and, one of them I can help them with, maybe, and the other two or three options I couldn't help them. And they kind of looked at me and they said, you're suggesting things that don't benefit you. And I said, of course I am. You're planning. I'm here to help you plan. I'm not here. I'm a fiduciary. I'm supposed to be helping you. I'm not supposed to be just trying to profit from you. And, I've seen scenarios where I've had to talk clients out of things where I hear, like you said, a bank where they're trying to sell some annuity and they're selling it a certain way and they're doing things that aren't actually legal, but nobody knows that, writing on illustrations and highlighting all the wonderful things and not telling you about anything that might go wrong with it. Let me tell you everything. Everything has a plus and a minus. There's always a minus as well. Nothing's wonderful. So essentially that if you go into that mindset, everybody will be better off. But essentially that's the key is you've got to see who your sources are, and you have to, I always think second opinions are really important. Are really, really important. If you have a gut feeling, excuse me, that this might be too good to be true, or you're not really sure, get a second opinion from somebody. It's really, really important. And not, I hate to say this, not grandpa who they know, like an actual professional that that might tell you an actual thing. Grandpa's going to have his opinion. That's the difference. Is grandpa's wonderful and might have taught you everything you need to know about finance, but it's opinion, and it's his opinion, and it's his situation that he's talking from. And he's or anything. He just knows him. Worked for him is not going to work for you. And that's the thing that we have to really hone in on, is not necessarily always intent, but also perspective on things.
Yeah. So when I now would come to you and would say, so on the one hand, I want to have some long-term savings, but I also would like to show you my bucket list because I want to do this and this in the next year, so to say, or in 2 years, whatever. How would you go through this process? Like, do I need to have my bucket list already ready, or is it like I come there kind of blank and you help me through the process? How is this working?
Yeah, I have both. I think that's a great question. That is a really good question. So I have both come to me. Some people know exactly what they want to do. They say, these are my 4 things I have to do before I retire, which is wonderful. That helps a lot. Most people don't. I would tell you, they have a vague idea of things that they want to do. Like, I say this all the time. I want to go back to Greece. My husband and I went to Greece many years ago, and we'd love to go back at some point. That's wonderful. I would call that a vague bucket list item. Now, people would say, well, what do you mean that's vague? You just said you want to go to Greece and you want to go on a cruise to Greece. Okay, but I don't have a why. I don't have a when. I don't have a how am I going to do it. I don't have any kind of details. I don't have pictures in my head of what I want it to look like. I don't have a concept of how much that might cost now. I don't have, so we really start to dig into very detailed things so that we have a basic idea, of cost, because if we're going to plan towards it, obviously we have to have a basic idea of what the cost is, timeline, all that stuff. But the biggest thing that people kind of forget is to really think about their why they want to go. Why do you want to go back to Greece? Well, I want to go back to Greece because I loved the feeling there. It was so freeing, being on the beach towns. The air was so clean there. I felt joy when I was there. I felt going back into time. You kind of think of like, why do you want to go? Like I probably am very annoying to people because I'll keep asking them why. Why do you want to do that? Why would that help? Why would, and they finally go, why? Why do you keep asking me that? Because I'm trying to get you to really get to your deep why. And so I finally got a client who had said she wanted to go to Bali. I said, okay, well, why do you want to go? Oh, because I've always wanted to go. But why? What, give me more. And so we kind of pushed and pushed, and she said, I want to be as far away as I could be from where I live now. And I want to have my phone off. I want to be by the water. I want everybody to leave me alone, and I don't want to have to do anything. That's a why. That's a why. I mean, that's totally fine. She wanted to have selfish time as far away from her current situation as possible. That is totally fine with me. I think that's great. And when she realized that, she goes, I do deserve a little time by myself. I said, yes, you do. You and your husband deserve to have some time by yourself. So, I asked them to do that, and I help try to create pictures for them in their brains to what does that look like? What does that feel like? How is that what's the food gonna taste like? We really go into that because those are things that will help motivate you to go through. So I always say your why equals motivation, because I would love to say it's a happy-go-lucky journey and that nothing ever happens. We never have an emergency. We hit our savings goal every single month. We exceed it. That's not what happens, right? We start off really strong for a month or two. And then, little Timmy needs braces. So we don't hit it that month. And then, your dad needs a loan because his car needs, work. And so then you give him a loan. And then you do, and we hit our mark, right? Or we don't hit our mark, and then we hit our mark one month, and then we don't hit it the next month. And we start to go, I'm never going to do it. It's never going to happen. I'm never going to hit that. And if we have these memories and this why, it helps us get back on track every month. It helps us look at everything again and go, okay, I'm back. We're restarting. We're getting this going again. And it's surprising, even if let's say your goal is to save $500 a month to your Bali, I'm just going to say Bali fund. Then essentially, let's say one month you hit 750 and you feel really good. And then the second month you hit 500. And then the next month you hit 200. And then you hit 300. And then you hit $50 and maybe $20 the next month. And then, once you're doing $20, we immediately go, I am not hitting my goal. This is horrible. You're $20 closer. That's the way I want people to think about it. So maybe we don't hit it exactly at the 2-year mark. Maybe it's 2.5 years that you do it, but you're still accomplishing your goal. And that's the thing, is that if we can have those really strong feelings, emotions, whys attached to it, it keeps us motivated to keep going. And then you have an accountability partner, which is me. So every month I usually check in and just see how people are feeling, how they're doing, not to bug them, but to basically say, I'm here if you need to go through this again, because I try to remind them of what they told me, what they wanted, how they felt, and sometimes I get people pushing back and going, well, it's changed now. Okay, well, tell me how it's changed, because what we do is we try to cover mistakes that we make, that we see as mistakes, right? I'm not hitting my goal, so I have to change it so I can hit my goal. I don't think that's necessarily the right thing. You just have to have some patience adapt, forgive yourself, and let's keep going forward. That's the key. That's what we do with money in general is, we have this, I wake up January 1st, 2023, and I am going to save $30,000 this year. I mean, whatever your goal was. And now we're a week in, and maybe you haven't saved a cent. Maybe you actually had to spend more this week than you did prior. The first thing that we do is go, I'm never going to hit 30,000. I'm just not going to do it. That's not, you got to jump into the next week and go, okay, what can I do to get started? And that's the thing that we don't do is we jump to a $500 savings rather than how can I baby step into this? And that's another thing I talk about is baby steps. What are some little habits that we can build on top of each other that will eventually get you to a much stronger financial place so that you're actually experiencing financial independence, which in my opinion is everyone's goal, to not have to be self-sustained, to not have to make a living if you don't want to have complete control of your finances. That is a very freeing feeling that I think people are craving, but they're not sure what that looks, feels, tastes, whatever, all the senses. So it's a really intricate process. It depends on every client. We also go through values, core values, with clients. Some go kicking and screaming and don't want to do it. And others are like, yeah, give me those. And we drill down on your 5 core values. Every person, not couple, every person has their core values. And we use those on decision-making processes. And the more that you understand your core values, the more you'll talk yourself out of doing those things that maybe you don't need to do. Buying that other black sweater that you already have 5 in the closet. You don't need the other black sweater. It looks just like the other ones, but we do it as a comfort, right? Because we have the money. Why not? I love my black sweaters. Why wouldn't I do that? Well, essentially maybe sit back and go, let me think about my core values. Does that fit them? And if it doesn't, then maybe you don't buy it this time and you make do with your 5 other ones that you have. So it's a really interesting process to go through.
And I have a saying, even if you are out of track, next day you can restart again. And yeah, it is never too late to restart because this happens. I think everybody has situations where we figure out, we have our goals and we have our milestones and our baby steps. And somehow something happens and we're out of track. But as soon as you remember, why am I doing this? This is exactly why. You will come back and figure out, okay, this is important for me. I really want to spend or collect the money or save the money is the right word. Sometimes I'm struggling. Yeah. Save the money to have this bigger goal fulfilled. And this could be traveling to Bali or having personal growth, for me, having a coaching with me, for example, people tell me sometimes I don't have the money. So I say, if it is important for you to make a life change, then of course, take your time and bring together your money and we will talk later again. No problem.
Yeah, exactly. I have a question for you. Do you find that some people who have joined, coaching with you and programs sometimes self-sabotage themselves? Meaning like they pay, they pay whatever the fee is and they seem happy about it and then they don't do anything with the coaching sometimes?
Yeah, this happens absolutely. So what I see is if we haven't cleared all the blockages, then this happens because something is interfering and they are sometimes not aware what is going on, why this is happening. And this can be like a trauma. They can't remember that is only in the subconscious mind. This can be a blocking belief they made up as a child because whatever they heard, for example, the parents struggling about money. And having fights around money. So they are sabotaging not only the money topic, but they're sabotaging relationship, for example.
Oh, that's interesting. That's another way that I think people get out. It's a money, to me, it's a money related issue. Sometimes when I hear coaches talk about how people just won't follow the program, they spend all this money and we as people who are trying to help are like, just, we want you to succeed. That is another, it's funny. It is a money mindset issue that they don't value themselves enough they don't value money, their money that they worked very hard for enough because they don't value themselves enough to necessarily continue with the program or pushing forward or that kind of thing. It's a really interesting phenomenon that some people do.
Yeah. Also, what I often see is like beliefs about around self-value. Like for them, it is easy to spend money for helping other people, for give it to some charities. But as soon as it comes to spending the money on themselves, it is like, no, this is kind of selfish and ego and whatever you have.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah, so
Mhm.
this is one thing I see, that these beliefs are around what they experience in their lifetime, about what they had as emotions connected to these experiences. Then I definitely see what is coming through the ancestral line, like I told you about my family. This is
Yeah.
often, people are often not aware how money blocks can come from one generation giving over to the next, to the next. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That totally makes sense. Yeah, I completely understand that self-worth. That's one of the obstacles I face a lot with the bucket list planning is people come and they think that they're selfish because they want something. And they say, "Well, I don't really want to do that. I don't really want to do bucket list planning." And I say, "Well, why is that?" And they say, "Well, I don't want anything. I mean, I have everything I need, which they might. I'm not going to argue that they might be very happy with what they have, but uh, it's seen as they see it as selfish to have a bucket list, to have something you're working towards. That, I have a client who really wants a certain type of vehicle, and he feels really selfish when he starts talking to me about it. But I don't really need it. I mean, we don't really have to save it. We can always change this. This seems really selfish. I mean, she's got to have, he's talking to his wife, you've got to have something else that you want. I mean, we should do one together. This is not what we should do. And it's because he feels like he's being materialistic, which in at least to me in the US, we're taught materialism is horrible. You can't be like that. That makes you a horrible person. We see people like, you know, flashy celebrities and stuff, and we look down on them because they're materialistic or whatever it is. And it's funny, it's a little bit of self-value more than anything, that it's okay to want something that maybe, is a little flashy or is a little something that's not about the family or about you know, you. And it have a hard time putting this self completely can see it in other people when they don't want this spotlight on themselves. And that's what those kind of bucket list items can do.
Yeah, and I think this is also again how you're grown up. So for example, I'm grown up on I would say in a green household. So for us, it was living sustainable was important, like having good food was important. But like for example, this kind of car, yeah, of course we need a car, but it is like when the neighbors bought like their big expensive car, it was like our car has also four wheels, so why don't we don't need that kind of car. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
um, Even though we had a lot of people coming to our house, and people from other countries lived in our house, so we were very open with that. But it was
Yeah.
about connection, it was about food, it was also clothes. No, okay, you have to wear something, but you don't have to wear a certain kind of brand. So this was very clear that how do we spend our money was totally different from some of my friends who had a big house. We also had one, but it was different. So
Mm-hmm.
and they spend money on expensive clothes and luxury cars. And for us, it was no, we don't need that because we want to spend our money with going out with friends and in vacation and having a good time. So I think it is really important to realize what kind of mindset are you growing up, and why does this happen?
Yeah.
Also, cultural thing, like in Germany, if someone goes out and has these amazing things, they often get a stamp like, no, they are, yeah, selfish, and same here. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
culture can play a lot more into things than we think it does for sure. And I totally agree with that. It's funny. It's either, people will go off and buy impulsively to cover up one feeling. So those that are probably buying lots of luxury things and things like that, they're always constantly saying, I deserve this. And that's one issue. And then you've got people who refuse to spend any money on themselves or enjoy anything. And that's another issue. And so that's why that values exercise is really important, because it helps people see what their values truly are. Nobody tells them what those values are. They get to choose from a huge list of different words that they identify with, and they bring it down to 3 to 5 of them, and we can change them. There's nobody set in stone. We don't put it, I don't etch it in a stone someplace and that's what it is. You can change it. And those values really help, because it really helps you kind of ground yourself in your decision making, including what you're spending your money on. And if you really kind of internalize them, it can make a huge difference. Huge difference.
yeah. So this is where are you spending your money on? Like, you said, like having the, I don't know, fifth black sweater or something. I can't remember, something like that. Is it that, for example, something is missing, like happiness or fulfillment or abundance?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah, possibly. It could also be habit. There's a lot of I'm hoping that I'm gonna have a class pretty soon about money habits. And essentially the habits that we put in place can actually make a huge difference. So if you're used to, I'm kind of bored, I'm going to go on Amazon, I'm going to little shop around and I'm going to buy this or this. Oh, that sounds like something I need. We always say we need stuff, which who knows if we actually need it or not, but especially in this buy stuff online so easily world. Um, and essentially it could be a habit more than anything, that habits can be good and bad. And a bad habit, I heard a really good, so I think it was James Clear is his name. He's the one that wrote Atomic Habits. I heard him on a podcast and he said he doesn't identify things as, I'm probably totally screwing this up, but he was saying you don't have to identify things as good and bad. He basically says you need to take a look at the habit and go, is it going to benefit you in the long run, or is it actually going to hurt you in the long run? And that's what identifies it as a habit to keep and maybe expand, and then habit to maybe minimize or get rid of. And he said putting little obstacles in place of those bad habits can make a big difference. Like he was saying that if he buys a 6-pack of beer and he puts it at the front of the fridge, it's gone within the week. But if he puts it in the back of the fridge where he can't see it really, that those beers can be sitting there for weeks, months on end, and he forgets they're there because he has to move stuff if he really sees it, and you have to really want it. We've all done that where you have to do the shuffle in the refrigerator. I thought that was brilliant because these habits we tend to build can really derail us from the things that we truly want, and we don't even realize we're doing them. Sometimes they're super small habits, and that's another thing that we start to incorporate is what are little things that you can do to help you move forward, to help not make this such an ordeal, such a process. I mean, financial planning is avoided a lot of times because people don't want to go through a process. They don't want to have to constantly be thinking about this. They enjoy the majority of their life and they don't want to do that. Well, what are some little habits we can sprinkle in so that they're just little things, 5-minute little exercises, things that you can do that won't take away from your flow of your day, but will exponentially help you in the long run. That's another thing. So those little impulses like buying the extra sweater and things like that, that might be a habit more than anything that we just don't, that are probably tied to, being unhappy or, something else. But sometimes you can't find that route unless you go to somebody like you, or they, you get really professional help or something like that. And if you're just trying to help yourself on your own, you might just try to find an obstacle to stop yourself from buying the fifth or sixth black sweater that you don't need.
Yeah, I think awareness is one point. So if you make a list of every expense you have done during the day, so starting in the morning buying a package of cigarettes, then you go to whatever, Starbucks, and buy your coffee for €5. Then no, you pass by a shop where you see some shoes. So this would be something for me, a trigger. Yeah.
Yeah.
These
Oh, of
shoes are
course. Shoes are
amazing.
wonderful.
So anyhow, yeah, and you said, oh, I just have 100 pairs of shoes, so I need one more.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and asking yourself, why do I do that? Yeah, is it just a habit because, no, or is it because I feel that something is not fulfilled and that I want to get a certain kind of feeling of happiness or whatever, and therefore,
Yeah.
or is it really important that I have this 101 pair of shoes because I have an amazing event where I really need to have this with my clothes, whatever. So
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, so understanding about that. Why am I spending this money for? Is it necessary? Is it supportive? Or can I use this amount of money to put it on the account of my whatever you figured out on your bucket list? And this would,
Exactly.
yeah, is this more important, your bucket list, or having whatever you just want to spend the money on?
Yeah, I always talk about a 5-minute pause, right? So if you can, especially like I said on the internet, we're all sitting at our desks way too much, which we all, we can talk about all that other stuff, but basically it makes it easy to take a break and go, I'm going to go on such and such website and and then, they're inundating you with tons of emails and newsletters and stuff too. So you click on it and you go, oh, I love those shoes. We'll use shoes because I love shoes too. My husband says I have too many. And essentially, I always go, well, they were all really inexpensive. That doesn't matter. But, I do it too. We all are human, right? That's the big thing. I'm not perfect. We're all human. I'm not perfect with money. But essentially, I always say do 5 minutes. Go put it in the shopping cart and just walk away for 5 minutes or do your emails or go back to work. It's amazing. All day will go by and you won't have bought it. And then it makes you stop for a second and go, well, why do I really need that? I mean, if I went all day and I didn't buy it, is it, they'll start nudging you and things like that. And you notice those emails come really fast to nudge you. If you don't buy that thing, they start inundating you with emails really quickly because they know that the longer it sits in your cart, the less chance you're going to buy it. And I do that at the stores too. I find all these things, I try them on, and then I, go, okay, here's the things I like. And I literally will just walk around the store and just keep looking at things before I go over and purchase them. I find that I take out like 4 or 5 things, if I have a big pile of stuff that I actually don't want after I think about it. So taking a breather for a second and giving yourself a little space to really think about whether you want it or not rather than impulse. We're so fast now. We're trying to do things so quickly all the time that 5 minutes can make a big difference. Big difference. The other thing that I suggest is if people are willing to do that like you said, write down all your expenses thing, wonderful. I would say 99% of people won't do that because they don't want to. It's a lot of work. B, and then you forget one day and you're like, oh, what did I buy? I can't remember. And then you start to beat yourself up. So here's the other trick I tell people to do, because we put everything on our credit cards, right? That's our impulse, is to put things on credit cards. Some people do cash, but most people are still doing credit cards. So I always say just take 5 minutes a week, open up your credit card online because we all have access to it, and just look at what you spent your money on. Don't judge it. You don't have to categorize it. You don't have to just look at it. Just read each line and go, what was that? Did I, and you'll start to self-critique and go, why did I buy that? I don't need that. I didn't realize how much I go to, the coffee house and get, $7 lattes or whatever you buy. It will start to open up a realization, and then you make your choices of what you want to spend your money on. And just if you commit 5 minutes a week to do that, it'll make a huge impact on what you spend your money on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So now, when people get aware, okay, it's a question where to spend their money on, do they already need to be wealthy or have a certain kind of amount of money on their account to start working with you? Like,
Yeah.
do you say whenever they feel for getting this done, they can contact you? So how is this working?
Yeah. No, so I don't have a minimum of what people need to have to invest with me or any of that kind of stuff. I have a couple of different ways that I'm putting together for people to work with me. Some is just project based. So if people just want to get a plan put together and want to implement and do it on their own, some people want to work through a credit card debt, and that's a project or something like that. Sometimes people want the ongoing help. So I have a monthly consultation program that we get together every month and we discuss everything. I'm not managing their investments. I'm not doing any of that stuff. We're just having discussions on basic financial topics and things that come up in life as well that go along with that. And some people want that traditional, manage my money and the planning. Every client, though, I really try to press. Now, obviously, it's their life. I don't make anybody do it, but I really try to press doing planning. I think that is the real value that I bring to clients is the planning. The investment management goes with that. And that's the thing that everybody needs to look at is, are their investments in line with their planning? And if they're not sure, that's a second opinion to me. So essentially that's, I have a very open, I'm hoping to get some group courses in place. I have a 1-day financial plan. So if people don't have the time to go through a full traditional financial planning process, they can get it all done in 1 day. I mean, there's just countless different ways. And if somebody has a way they want to work together, I'm open to hear how they think that it will work and if I think it will fit for what I do and how I help people. So it's a multitude of different ways, but it all starts with just having I call it a getting to know you call. It's just 30 minutes. I actually have a video I'm happy to send anybody just for expectations of what it would be. It's really just a conversation though. And it's a lot of what we talked about, how do you feel about money? What are you trying to accomplish? Why are you trying to accomplish that? Things like that, just to see if I even feel like I can help. Because there's a lot of people that need help with taxes and things like that I'm not necessarily the right person to do that for. You need a tax preparer, you need an accountant, you need whatever that other resource is that's maybe they're not ready for me and they need somebody like you to go through some trauma and some other things that, that they need to work through before they're start saving. So that's why networking is wonderful. And that's why I get to know people like you and lots of resources. But, that's the starting point is just kind of getting a no obligation, no pressure. I don't pressure anybody into sales of anything. And I work a lot with women and their families, but women usually start the conversation because they feel that they want to make a change. And I think that's wonderful.
Okay, so if now my audience is interested to come in contact with you, how can they reach out to you? Do we have a website, social media,
Yeah.
whatever?
Absolutely. So we have our website, which is onevisionretire.com. I have a business partner. I tend to do a lot of personal planning. Chris does a lot of the business planning. So we have kind of both sides covered. So if you're a business owner, we can help with that too. But onevisionretire.com, there is a resources page that has a lot of blogs and videos and other things on there. So you get to know us and get to just get information. They go on there, but you can also go to YouTube, which we upload a lot of videos on there. And then actually I'm very active on LinkedIn. So you can just find me at Lisa Sakai on LinkedIn, and there's not many of us out there with my last name. So you can just find me there and connect, and hopefully you can get some value from there. And I'm always open to questions, conversations. And, but I am always going to say that if I don't know your situation, I'm not going to give you advice. I need to have a deeper conversation before I can give advice on anything.
Yeah, wow, great. So I will put all the links in the show notes so that people can easily reach out to you and just click on the link and find you in the internet. And last but not least, do you have any tips finally for the audience?
I would say the one tip I would have is try to link money and joy together. If you can link those two together in your mind, you will immediately start to relieve some of that stress that money can kind of create. And if you try to just say, if you think something about money negative and you just think the word joy, I don't know, for me at least, the word joy just brings happiness to me. I think that's probably a lot of people. And if joy is not your right word, maybe it's, some other kind of happy word that makes you happy. If you can attach that to it, that will be immediately a huge difference in the way that you're approaching it. And I think the other thing that I want people to realize is that I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but money is a little bit of a game. And if you come at it with an eye of how can I use money to my best advantage, not doing anything shady or anything, but how can I use the money I work really hard for and just create something that's amazing for myself and keep control as much as you can. You can't control the markets, you can't control interest in inflation and stuff, but you can control what you can control. I think if you come at it in an intellectual side of it as well, rather than an emotional side, which is how we usually come at money, that will put you ahead of the game as well.
Yeah, wow. Thank you so much. Thank you for being my guest, for giving me your time and sharing insights with the audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This was wonderful. I appreciate it.
Yeah, speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening or watching my podcast, Holistic Creators. If you want to know more about how I can help and support you, have a look at my website, spiritualchangemaker.com. You can also join my Facebook group, Spiritual Changemakers Community. Stay tuned for the next episode by subscribing to this channel. And you also can check the previous episodes.